The mechanic fed stray cats every night, never knowing they were the goddess's spies. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The orbital station Terminus 7 hung in the void like a rusted crown, its metal bones creaking with age and neglect. In the bowels of this forgotten outpost, where the ventilation systems wheezed and the artificial gravity flickered unpredictably, there worked a human mechanic named Blake Turner. He was nobody special, just another grease-stained human keeping ancient machinery alive with spare parts and stubbornness. What nobody knew, not even Blake himself, was that his simple act of kindness would reshape the balance of cosmic power itself. Blake wiped the sweat from his forehead, leaving another dark smear across his skin. The maintenance bay was sweltering tonight, the cooling system having given up the ghost 3 days ago. He made a mental note to fix it tomorrow, right after he patched the leak in Section 12 and recalibrated the oxygen recyclers in the eastern wing. The list never got shorter. Terminus 7 was a dying station in a dying sector, home to the unwanted and forgotten. Most of the inhabitants were refugees, criminals, or people like Blake who had nowhere else to go. He finished tightening the last bolt on the water purifier and sat back on his heels. His back ached, his hands were cramped, and his stomach reminded him that he had skipped lunch again. But the purifier hummed to life, and that small victory felt good. Blake gathered his tools and headed toward his quarters, a cramped closet of a room that smelled like oil and recycled air. The corridor was dim, half the lights burned out and never replaced. His boots echoed on the metal grating as he walked. Then he heard it, the sound that had become part of his nightly routine. A soft mewing, plaintive and hungry. Blake smiled despite his exhaustion. He reached the junction where the main corridor met the refuse disposal area and crouched down. From the shadows emerged a scraggly orange cat, thin as a wire and missing half an ear. Behind it came 2 more, a black one with a white patch on its chest and a gray tabby with suspicious yellow eyes. Nobody knew where the cats had come from. Station records showed no pets registered, and bringing animals aboard violated at least 7 regulations. Yet here they were, a colony of strays living in the walls and forgotten spaces of Terminus 7. Most people ignored them or chased them away. Blake fed them. He pulled a ration bar from his pocket, broke it into pieces, and set them on the floor. The cats approached cautiously, as they did every night, maintaining just enough distance to flee if needed. But they ate, their small bodies trembling with hunger and gratitude. "There you go, guys," Blake said softly. "Sorry it's not much. Maybe tomorrow I'll snag some real food from the commissary." The orange cat, the bravest of the 3, finished its portion and sat down, studying Blake with intense green eyes. He always felt like the cats were watching him, really watching him, with an intelligence that seemed almost unnatural. But that was ridiculous. They were just cats. "You 3 should find somewhere warmer to sleep tonight," Blake continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "The environmental controls are acting up again. Might drop below comfortable levels in this section." The black cat with the white patch tilted its head, as if considering his words. Then all 3 cats turned and disappeared back into the shadows, moving with eerie synchronization. Blake stood, his knees popping in protest. He was only 32, but felt twice that age. Terminus 7 aged everyone prematurely, grinding them down like gears without lubrication. He made his way to his quarters, showered in lukewarm water, and collapsed onto his bunk. Sleep came quickly, but his dreams were strange. He saw the cats, hundreds of them, stretching out across the stars like a vast network of glowing eyes. And at the center of this cosmic web sat a woman, tall and beautiful and terrible, her eyes containing galaxies. She smiled at him, and he felt both honored and afraid. Blake woke with a start, his heart pounding. Just a dream, nothing more. The stress was getting to him. He needed to take a day off, though he could not remember the last time he had done that. Years, probably. The next morning began like any other. Blake grabbed a coffee substitute that tasted like burnt plastic and headed to the maintenance bay. The station's ancient computer system had flagged 17 new problems overnight, each one marked as high priority. He sighed and got to work. Hours blurred together in a haze of sparks and swearing. He replaced a burnt-out relay in the communications array, patched a coolant leak that would have been catastrophic in another few hours, and jury-rigged a solution for the failing artificial gravity in Section 9. Nobody thanked him. Nobody even noticed. That was the life of a mechanic on a forgotten station. Around midday, the station's administrator, a Volian named Hectus, called him to the command center. Volians were tall, blue-skinned humanoids with 4 arms and an inflated sense of their own importance. Hectus embodied all the worst traits of his species. "Turner," Hectus said, not looking up from his data pad. "We're expecting a diplomatic delegation tomorrow. Representatives from the Celestin Empire. Very important. Very powerful. I need you to make sure everything is functioning perfectly." Blake felt his stomach sink. The Celestins were one of the major powers in this sector, a militaristic society that valued strength and efficiency above all else. They had little patience for weakness or failure. "Sir, with all due respect, this station is barely holding together," Blake said carefully. "I can make sure the critical systems are stable, but perfect? That's not realistic given our resources." Hectus's 4 eyes finally focused on Blake, narrowing with irritation. "Then I suggest you work through the night. Failure is not an option. The Celestins are considering using Terminus 7 as a regional supply depot. This could mean funding, resources, a future for this station. Don't ruin it with your human incompetence." Blake bit back a sharp reply. Arguing with Hectus was pointless. "I'll do my best, sir." "Your best had better be sufficient," Hectus said dismissively, returning his attention to the datapad. Blake left the command center, his jaw clenched in frustration. Work through the night? He had been working through every night for months. His body was approaching its limits, and he knew it. But what choice did he have? This station was his home, such as it was, and the people here depended on him, whether they acknowledged it or not. He spent the rest of the day in a frantic race against time and entropy. The life support systems needed complete recalibration. The docking bay's magnetic clamps were degraded to the point of failure. The water recyclers were producing water with unacceptable contamination levels. Each problem took hours to address, and fixing one often revealed 2 more lurking beneath. By the time night fell, Blake was running on fumes. His hands shook from exhaustion and too much caffeine. His back screamed in protest every time he bent or twisted. But he kept working, because that was what he did. That was all he knew how to do. Around midnight, he took a break, stumbling to the junction where he usually fed the cats. They were waiting, as always. Tonight there were 5 of them. The usual 3 plus 2 new arrivals, a sleek Siamese with blue eyes, and a battered Tom, missing most of its tail. Blake smiled despite his exhaustion. "Hey guys, brought you something special tonight." He had managed to snag a packet of actual meat from the commissary, expired but still sealed. He opened it and divided the contents among the cats. They devoured it eagerly, purring with satisfaction. As Blake watched them eat, he felt something shift in the air. The temperature dropped several degrees, and the lights flickered. The cats stopped eating simultaneously, their heads all turning toward the end of the corridor. The shadows there seemed to deepen, to take on weight and substance. Then she appeared, stepping from the darkness as if it were a doorway. The woman from his dream. She was tall, perhaps 7 feet, with skin that seemed to shimmer between pale white and the deep black of space. Her hair flowed around her like it was underwater, defying gravity and logic. Her eyes were the most unsettling feature, pupils that contained distant stars and swirling nebulae. Blake stumbled backward, his tired brain struggling to process what he was seeing. Hallucination? Had he finally pushed himself too far? "Blake Turner," the woman said, her voice echoing strangely, as if coming from everywhere at once. "Do not be afraid. I mean you no harm." "What are you?" Blake managed to croak out. "Who are you?" The woman smiled, and it was both kind and terrifying. "I have many names, but you may call me Nyara. I am what your species might call a goddess, though that term is imprecise. I am the patron of small, forgotten things. The overlooked, the discarded, the strays." She gestured toward the cats, which had formed a semicircle around her feet, sitting at attention like soldiers. "These are my eyes and ears," Nyara continued. "They roam the universe, watching, listening, reporting back to me. They witness acts of kindness and cruelty, moments of beauty and horror. And for months now, they have been watching you. Blake looked at the cats with new understanding and a touch of betrayal. You've been spying on me? I prefer to think of it as observing, Nyara said gently. And what they have observed has touched me deeply. Every night, without fail, you feed them. You share your own meager rations with creatures that can offer you nothing in return. You speak to them with kindness and respect. In all the worlds under my watch, such consistent compassion is rare. Among humans, it is nearly unheard of. Blake felt his face flush. I just feed some cats. It's not a big deal. Is it not? Nyara moved closer, and Blake could feel power radiating from her like heat from a furnace. You are exhausted, starving, overworked, and underappreciated. You have every reason to be bitter and selfish. Yet you share what little you have. You give freely without expectation of reward. Do you know how precious that is? How rare? Blake did not know what to say. He felt suddenly vulnerable, exposed, as if this cosmic being could see every corner of his soul. The Celestians arrive tomorrow, Nyara said, her tone shifting. You are afraid you will fail, that your best will not be good enough. How do you know about that? Blake asked, though he already knew the answer. The cats. They were always around, always watching. I know many things, Nyara said. I know that you will work through the night until your body collapses. I know that even your heroic efforts will not be sufficient, because this station is beyond saving through normal means. I know that the Celestians will judge Terminus 7 unworthy and recommend its closure. Thousands will be displaced, forced to seek shelter elsewhere. Many will not survive the journey. Blake felt despair wash over him. Then why are you telling me this? Why show yourself at all if everything is hopeless? Because I wish to offer you a gift, Nyara said. A reward for your kindness. I cannot change the station's fate directly. The rules of cosmic governance prevent direct intervention in mortal affairs. But I can grant you knowledge, understanding, abilities that will allow you to save this place yourself. She extended her hand, and Blake saw that she held something. It looked like a small sphere of crystallized starlight, pulsing with inner radiance. This contains the accumulated knowledge of 1,000 civilizations' greatest engineers and mechanics, Nyara explained. Technologies, techniques, solutions to problems you did not even know existed. Consume it, and this wisdom will become yours. You will be able to repair and rebuild this station in ways that will astound even the Celestians. Blake stared at the sphere, his mind reeling. Why me? Why not give this to someone more important, more qualified? Because importance and qualification are not the measures by which I judge, Nyara said. Kindness is. Compassion is. You fed my spies, Blake Turner. You showed mercy to the forgotten. Now I show mercy to you. Blake reached out slowly, his hand trembling. His fingers closed around the sphere, and it was warm, almost alive. The moment he touched it, the sphere dissolved, flowing into his skin like liquid light. Knowledge exploded in his mind, overwhelming and exhilarating. He saw blueprints, equations, designs for technologies centuries beyond anything he had known. He understood suddenly how matter and energy could be manipulated at quantum levels, how failing systems could be regenerated, how a dying station could be reborn. He gasped, falling to his knees. The cats surrounded him, pressing against him, purring loudly. Their warmth anchored him as the knowledge settled into his consciousness, organizing itself into accessible patterns. When he finally looked up, Nyara was smiling. Use this gift wisely, Blake Turner. Save your station. Save your people. And never stop feeding the strays, for you never know who might be watching. She stepped backward into the shadows and vanished, as if she had never been there at all. The cats dispersed, disappearing into the walls and vents, returning to their secret lives. Blake was alone in the corridor, but he was not the same person he had been minutes before. He stood, feeling energy coursing through his body despite the exhaustion that had plagued him moments ago. His mind was clear, focused, filled with possibilities. He could see the station's systems in his mind's eye now, every component, every connection, every point of failure. And he knew exactly how to fix them all. Blake returned to the maintenance bay with new purpose. He began to work, but this was different from his usual desperate patching and temporary solutions. His hands moved with impossible precision, guided by knowledge that felt both foreign and intimately familiar. He modified the power distribution network, creating redundancies and efficiencies that should not have been possible with the available materials. He reconfigured the life support systems, implementing techniques from species that would not evolve for another 1,000 years. He rebuilt the failing infrastructure from the inside out, transforming weakness into strength. Hours passed in a blur of creation. Blake worked faster than he ever had, yet with meticulous care. Tools seemed to leap to his hands before he reached for them. Solutions presented themselves the moment problems appeared. It was like conducting a symphony, every element harmonizing perfectly. By dawn, Blake stood in the main observation deck, looking out at the station with new eyes. Terminus 7 was no longer dying. The lights burned steady and bright. The air was clean and temperature-controlled. The systems hummed with health and vitality. He had not just repaired the station. He had revolutionized it. Hectus arrived shortly after sunrise, flanked by 2 Celestan officers. The Celestans were an imposing species, 8 feet tall, with chitinous armor-like skin and multiple eyes arranged in geometric patterns across their faces. They radiated military efficiency and barely concealed disdain. "This is Terminus 7, Hectus said nervously. "As you can see, we have been experiencing some difficulties, but I assure you that we are working to address them." The lead Celestan officer, whose nameplate identified him as Commander Vexor, looked around with obvious skepticism. "Your distress reports indicated critical system failures across multiple sectors. Yet I see fully functional lighting, temperature control appears stable, and according to my scanner, all primary systems are operating within optimal parameters. Explain this discrepancy." Hectus looked confused, his 4 eyes darting around as if seeing the station for the first time. "I do not understand. Yesterday, we were on the verge of catastrophic failure. Perhaps your mechanic is more competent than you believed," the second Celestan officer, a female named Kira, said dryly. "Where is this mechanic? I would like to meet them." Hectus gestured frantically at an assistant, who scurried off to find Blake. Minutes later, Blake arrived, still wearing his grease-stained coveralls, looking exhausted but satisfied. "You are the station mechanic?" Commander Vexor asked, his multiple eyes focusing on Blake with disconcerting intensity. "Yes, sir," Blake replied. "Blake Turner. You repaired this entire station in one night?" Kira asked, her tone incredulous. "I did what needed to be done," Blake said simply. Vexor pulled out a sophisticated scanning device and began examining the walls, the control panels, the very air around them. His expression shifted from skepticism to surprise to something approaching awe. "These modifications," he said slowly, "these are not standard repair protocols. This is advanced engineering. Very advanced. Some of these techniques are beyond even Celestan technology. How did a human mechanic on a dying outpost station achieve this?" Blake met his gaze steadily. "I learned from the best teachers. And I had strong motivation. This station is home to thousands of people. They deserve better than to be forgotten and abandoned." Kira approached him, studying him closely. "There is something different about you, human. I can sense it. You have been touched by something beyond the ordinary." Blake said nothing. Let them wonder. Commander Vexor began a thorough inspection of the station, and the more he saw, the more impressed he became. The docking bay systems were not just repaired but upgraded to handle 3 times the original traffic. The power generation was running at 130% efficiency, something that should have been impossible. The life support systems could maintain a population 5 times larger than the station's current inhabitants. By the end of the day, Vexor and Kira requested a private meeting with Hectus and Blake. They gathered in the command center, and the atmosphere was tense. "I will be direct," Commander Vexor said. "When we arrived this morning, I expected to recommend that Terminus 7 be decommissioned. The reports we received painted a picture of a failing station barely clinging to existence. What I have found instead is a facility that exceeds Celestan standards in almost every measurable category. This station could serve not merely as a supply depot, but as a regional hub, a nexus for trade, diplomacy, and strategic operations." Hectus's eyes widened with shock and delight. "Are you saying?" "I am saying that the Celestan Empire is prepared to invest significant resources into Terminus 7, Vexor interrupted. "We will provide funding for expansion, personnel for security and administration, and technology upgrades. But I have conditions. He turned to Blake, his expression serious. First, Blake Turner must be appointed as the chief engineering officer of this station, with full authority over all technical operations. Second, he must be given whatever resources and personnel he requests to maintain and improve these systems. Third, he will serve as a consultant to our own engineering corps, sharing his knowledge and techniques. Blake felt the weight of that responsibility settling on his shoulders. I accept, on one condition of my own. Vexer's eyes narrowed. You presume to negotiate with a Celestin commander? I do, Blake said calmly. My condition is that Terminus 7 remains a refuge for those who have nowhere else to go. The refugees, the outcasts, the forgotten. They stay. This station serves them first, and any other purposes second. Silence filled the command center. Hectus looked like he might faint. Kira's expression was unreadable. Commander Vexer stared at Blake for a long moment, then surprised everyone by laughing, a harsh, barking sound. You have courage, human. Very well. Your condition is accepted. The forgotten will have their sanctuary. He extended his hand, and Blake shook it, sealing the agreement. In the weeks that followed, Terminus 7 transformed. Celestin resources poured in, bringing new modules, advanced technology, and personnel. But Blake remained at the heart of it all, directing the expansion with the same care he had shown when feeding stray cats. He ensured that the station's original inhabitants were not displaced or forgotten in the rush of progress. Housing was improved, jobs were created, opportunities emerged. And every night, without fail, Blake still went to the junction near the refuse disposal area and fed the cats. Sometimes there were 3, sometimes a dozen. They came and ate and watched him with knowing eyes. He talked to them, sharing his thoughts and worries, his hopes and fears. He never saw Nyara again, but he felt her presence in the darkness, in the spaces between stars, in the eyes of the strays. He knew she was watching, and that thought brought him comfort. 3 months after the Celestins' first visit, a new arrival docked at Terminus 7. She was young, a human engineer named Rachel Carter, recruited from a prestigious academy on Earth. She had heard stories of the miraculous station in the frontier, the place where impossible engineering had become reality, and she wanted to learn from the legendary Blake Turner. Blake met her in the docking bay, noting her eager expression and clean uniform. She reminded him of himself years ago, before the galaxy had ground away his idealism. Welcome to Terminus 7, he said, shaking her hand. I hope you're ready to work. We've got a lot to do. I'm ready for anything, Rachel said enthusiastically. I've studied your modifications, the reports that have circulated through the engineering community. What you've accomplished here defies conventional understanding. I have to know, how did you do it? What's your secret? Blake smiled slightly. The secret is simple. You care. About the work, about the people, about the small forgotten things that everyone else overlooks. You remember that every system you repair, every bolt you tighten, serves a purpose beyond itself. It keeps people alive. It gives them hope. Rachel looked slightly disappointed, as if she had expected some revolutionary formula or hidden technique. That's it. Just care more. That's it, Blake confirmed. Everything else is just engineering. He showed her around the station, introducing her to the systems and the crew. As they walked, he noticed cats everywhere, perched on railings, curled in corners, watching with alert eyes. Rachel did not seem to notice them, but Blake did. He always did. That night, he brought Rachel to the junction, carrying extra rations. The cats appeared, and she gasped with delight. I didn't know there were cats on the station, she exclaimed. They're adorable. Are they pets? No, Blake said, setting down the food. They're strays. I feed them every night. That's so kind, Rachel said, kneeling down to try to pet the orange cat. It backed away, maintaining its distance. Why do they stay if they're strays? They could leave on any of the ships that dock here. Maybe they like it here, Blake said. Or maybe they have a job to do. Sometimes the smallest, most overlooked creatures serve the greatest purposes. Rachel gave him a curious look, but did not press the question. They watched the cats eat in comfortable silence. Over the following months, Rachel proved to be an excellent engineer and a quick learner. Blake taught her everything he could, not just the technical knowledge but the philosophy behind it. She embraced his approach, working long hours but never forgetting the human element, the reason behind the repairs. The station continued to grow. New modules were added, expanding capacity and capabilities. A marketplace emerged, bringing together dozens of species for trade and cultural exchange. A medical facility was established, offering care to those who had gone without for years. Schools were opened for the children of refugees, giving them education and opportunity. Terminus 7 became a symbol throughout the sector, the station that refused to die, the sanctuary where the forgotten found hope. Delegations came from across the galaxy to study what had been achieved, to understand how a dying outpost had been transformed into a thriving hub. And through it all, Blake remained humble. He deflected praise, insisted that the success belonged to everyone, and continued his nightly ritual of feeding the cats. Those who worked closely with him noticed something unusual about his abilities. He seemed to anticipate problems before they occurred, to understand systems at a deeper level than training alone could explain. Rumors circulated, whispers of divine intervention, but Blake never confirmed or denied anything. One evening, nearly a year after Nyara's appearance, Blake was alone in the maintenance bay, working on a new recycling system that would process waste into usable materials. The technology was based on principles from the knowledge Nyara had given him, adapted for the station's specific needs. He heard a soft meow and turned to see the orange cat sitting on a workbench, watching him. It was the same cat from that first night, the one that had always been the bravest. "Hello, friend," Blake said, setting down his tools. "What brings you here?" The cat tilted its head, and for a moment, Blake could swear he saw something cosmic flash in its green eyes. Then it spoke, not with a voice but directly into his mind. "She is pleased with what you have accomplished," the cat said, its mental voice gentle and ancient. "You have honored her gift and proven worthy of her faith. The forgotten have found a home, and the strays have a guardian. This pleases her greatly." Blake was not as shocked as he might have been. After everything he had experienced, talking cats seemed almost reasonable. "Tell her I'm grateful," Blake said softly. "Tell her I'll never forget what she taught me. That the smallest acts of kindness can change everything." "She knows," the cat replied. "And she watches still. We all do. Remember, Blake Turner, you are never alone. In every shadow, in every forgotten corner, we are there. The eyes of the goddess see all, and she judges by the content of the heart, not the grandeur of the deeds." The cat jumped down from the workbench and padded away, disappearing through a vent. Blake returned to his work, but he was smiling. He had been chosen by a goddess, given powers beyond mortal understanding, and used those gifts to save thousands of lives. Yet somehow, the thing that meant the most was knowing that his simple act of feeding strays had been witnessed and valued. That night, he went to the junction as always. A dozen cats waited for him, more than usual. He fed them all, speaking to them softly, thanking them for their company and their vigilance. As he watched them eat, he thought about how strange and beautiful the universe was, how the most powerful beings could value the smallest gestures, how kindness could echo across dimensions. Rachel found him there, as she often did. She had adopted his habit of feeding the cats, and it had become a bonding ritual between them. "I've been thinking," she said, settling down beside him, "about what you told me when I first arrived, about caring being the secret to everything. I thought it was too simple, but I was wrong. It's not simple at all. It's the hardest thing in the universe, to maintain compassion when everything is falling apart, to remember that individuals matter even when you're dealing with massive systems. You taught me that." Blake felt a warmth in his chest, pride and hope intermingled. "You're going to be a great engineer, Rachel. Better than me, probably. You have the technical skills and the heart. That's a rare combination. I learned from the best," she said, smiling. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the cats. In the shadows beyond, unseen by Rachel but clear to Blake's enhanced perception, dozens more cats watched from hidden vantage points. And beyond them, in the deeper darkness between stars, Blake felt the presence of Nyara, the goddess of forgotten things, smiling upon her chosen champion and his growing legacy. Years passed. Terminus 7 flourished beyond anyone's wildest expectations. It became one of the most important stations in the entire sector, a hub of commerce, diplomacy, and culture. The Celestian Empire formally designated it as a free port, granting it autonomy and protection. Dozens of species maintained permanent diplomatic missions there, and the marketplace became legendary across 100 worlds. Blake was offered positions elsewhere, prestigious appointments with higher pay and greater recognition. He declined them all. Terminus 7 was his home, and these forgotten people were his family. He had learned from Nyara that greatness was not measured in accolades or wealth, but in the positive impact on the lives of others, especially those whom society overlooked. Rachel eventually became his equal, co-managing the station's engineering operations. Together, they trained a new generation of mechanics and engineers, passing on not just technical knowledge but the philosophy of compassionate competence. Their students spread across the galaxy, carrying Blake's lessons with them, creating ripples of positive change wherever they went. The cats remained a constant presence on the station. They multiplied over the years, their population growing to nearly 100. Station residents came to see them as good luck charms, as symbols of Terminus 7's identity. There were cats in the marketplace, cats in the residential quarters, cats in the command center. They were everywhere and nowhere, watching with intelligent eyes, reporting back to their goddess. On the 10th anniversary of Nyara's appearance, Blake stood in the observation deck, looking out at the station he had saved and helped rebuild. It was night cycle, and the stars beyond the viewport shone with cold beauty. He was 42 now, with gray beginning to thread through his hair, but he felt more alive than ever. Behind him, he heard the soft padding of feet. He turned to see not one cat, but dozens, filling the observation deck in a silent procession. They arranged themselves in a circle around him, and the air grew cold and charged with power. Nyara stepped from the shadows, as radiant and terrible as he remembered. But this time, her smile was warm, almost maternal. "Blake Turner," she said, her cosmic voice echoing. 10 years ago, I gave you a gift, and you have used it more wisely than I dared hope. You have created something beautiful here, a true sanctuary for the forgotten. You have proven that one person with compassion and determination can change the fate of thousands. Blake bowed his head respectfully. I only did what was right. What you taught me was possible. No, Nyara said firmly. I gave you knowledge, nothing more. The compassion was already in your heart. I saw it in how you fed my spies, how you shared your meager resources with creatures that could offer you nothing in return. That compassion, that fundamental kindness, was always yours. I merely gave you the tools to express it on a larger scale. She moved closer, and Blake felt the weight of cosmic attention focused entirely on him. It was humbling and terrifying and exhilarating all at once. I have come tonight to offer you another choice, Nyara said. You have fulfilled the purpose I saw in you. You have saved Terminus 7 and given hope to the hopeless. You could rest now, retire, live out your days in comfort and peace. Or you could continue, taking your gifts and your compassion to other forgotten places, other dying stations, and struggling colonies. You could become my champion in truth, wandering the stars and performing miracles wherever the forgotten gather. Blake considered the offer carefully. Part of him was tempted. He was tired, worn down by years of constant work. The idea of rest was appealing. But he thought about all the other stations like Terminus 7 had been, all the other mechanics working themselves to death, trying to save crumbling infrastructure, all the other forgotten people waiting for someone to care. If I accept, Blake said slowly, what happens to Terminus 7? I can't abandon the people here. You would not abandon them, Nyara assured him. You have built something sustainable, trained successors who can continue your work. Rachel is ready to take on full responsibility. The station will thrive without you, though you will certainly be missed. Blake looked at the cats surrounding him, at Nyara's eternal eyes, at the stars beyond the viewport. He thought about his life, about the choices that had led him here, about the simple act of feeding strays that had changed everything. I accept, he said. If I can help others the way I helped Terminus 7, then that's what I should do. That's what I want to do. Nyara's smile brightened, and the stars themselves seemed to shine more intensely. Then you shall be my wandering mechanic, my champion of the forgotten. You will travel from place to place, appearing where hope is dying, bringing knowledge and compassion to those who have been abandoned by fate. And my eyes will go with you, guiding you to where you are needed most." She touched his forehead, and Blake felt power surge through him, different from the knowledge she had given before. This was not information, but transformation. His body became stronger, more resilient. His lifespan extended, giving him centuries instead of decades. His senses sharpened, allowing him to perceive the hidden connections between all things. "Go forth, Blake Turner," Nyara commanded. "Feed the strays, repair the broken, and remind the universe that the forgotten are never truly alone." Blake felt himself dissolving, his physical form becoming light and possibility. The last thing he saw before the transformation completed was Rachel, standing in the doorway of the observation deck, tears streaming down her face, but smiling with pride and understanding. She knew. Somehow, she had always known. Then Blake was elsewhere, standing in the maintenance bay of a different station, one even more decrepit than Terminus 7 had been. Around him, in the shadows and vents, he could sense the cats, Nyara's eternal spies, waiting to guide him. He picked up a wrench and got to work, because that was what he did, what he had always done, what he would do for centuries to come. He was Blake Turner, the wandering mechanic, champion of the forgotten, chosen by a goddess because he fed stray cats. And he would spend the rest of his impossibly long life proving that the smallest acts of kindness could reshape reality itself, one forgotten station at a time. The goddess watched from her realm between stars, satisfied with her choice. She had chosen correctly, as she always did. Kindness, true kindness without expectation of reward, was the rarest and most powerful force in the universe. And in Blake Turner, she had found that kindness in its purest form. Decades turned to centuries. Blake's legend grew, whispered across 1,000 worlds. The wandering mechanic, who appeared when all hope was lost, who performed miracles with ancient tools and newer wisdom, who asked for nothing but always left behind prosperity and renewed faith. Some said he was a ghost, others called him an angel. A few knew the truth, that he was simply a man who had been kind to strays and earned a goddess's favor. Terminus 7 never forgot him. A statue was erected in the main plaza, depicting Blake kneeling to feed a cat, capturing the moment that had changed everything. Rachel led the station for 40 years before passing the torch to her own successor, and each leader maintained Blake's traditions and philosophy. The cats remained, generation after generation, watching and waiting and reporting to their mistress. And across the galaxy, in forgotten corners and dying places, Blake continued his work. He saved stations and colonies, habitats and outposts. He trained countless engineers, spreading his philosophy of compassionate competence like seeds on fertile ground. And wherever he went, he fed the strays, the cats that were never really cats, the eyes of a goddess who valued kindness above all else. One night, in his 300th year of wandering, Blake sat in the maintenance bay of a station whose name he had already forgotten. Tomorrow he would move on to the next place, the next crisis, the next opportunity to help. But tonight, he rested, and the cats surrounded him in the darkness. "Do you ever regret your choice?" the orange cat asked, the same one that had spoken to him centuries ago, or perhaps a descendant. It was impossible to tell. Blake smiled, his face weathered by time, but his eyes still bright with purpose. "Not for a moment. I have lived 1,000 lifetimes in these centuries. I have seen wonders and performed miracles. I have saved millions of lives and inspired billions more. And it all started because I shared my food with creatures that could offer me nothing in return. How could I regret that?" "She asked that I tell you something," the cat said. "She is proud of you, her champion. You have exceeded even her grandest hopes. You have proven that humanity, so often dismissed as crude and temporary, possesses a capacity for compassion that rivals the gods themselves." Blake felt tears prick his eyes, the first he had shed in decades. To know that he had made a goddess proud, that his small acts had meant so much, it was overwhelming in the best possible way. "Tell her thank you," Blake whispered. "Tell her that the gift she gave me was not the knowledge or the long life. It was the understanding that kindness matters, that every small act of compassion echoes across eternity. That's the real gift, and I will honor it until the stars themselves grow cold. The cat purred, pressing against his leg. She knows. She has always known. Sleep now, champion. Tomorrow, more forgotten souls await your arrival. Blake closed his eyes and slept, surrounded by cats and cosmic purpose. In his dreams, he saw Nyara, and she was smiling. The wandering mechanic had fulfilled his purpose and would continue to do so for centuries yet to come. All because he had fed stray cats every night, never knowing they were the goddess's spies, never imagining that simple kindness could reshape the cosmos itself. And in that understanding, in that perfect synthesis of humility and purpose, Blake Turner had become something more than human, more than champion. He had become a living embodiment of the principle that drives the universe forward, that kindness, freely given without expectation, is the most powerful force in all of existence. The forgotten would never be truly forgotten, not while the wandering mechanic walked among the stars, guided by the eternal eyes of the goddess and fueled by the same compassion that had led him to share his last rations with hungry strays in a forgotten corridor of a dying station. That was his truth, his purpose, his eternal legacy. And it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.